Immunity does not mean you've necessarily done anything wrong. However, Flynn himself had this to say on that very topic last year on Meet the Press.
The very last thing that John Podesta just said is no individual too big to jail. That should include people like Hillary Clinton. I mean, 5 people around her have been given immunity, to include her former chief of staff. When you are given immunity, that means that you've probably committed a crime.
When you are given immunity, you've probably committed a crime. For the latest on the investigation, I'm joined now by NBC News national security reporter Ken Delanian. Ken, this seems like a big development.
Huge development, Chris. And there's a lot of possibilities here. You know, we know that Mike Flynn did not tell the truth about his conversations with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak to the vice president. What we don't know is whether he was interviewed by the FBI and what did he tell the FBI about those conversations. We also don't know what he listed on his form SF-86 that he would have had to fill out to get a security clearance at the White House. And of course, you know, his lawyer filed on his behalf forms explaining that he was actually lobbying for Turkish interests during the election campaign and the transition when he hadn't filed those forms as required. So there are a lot of potential openings here that the FBI would be interested in, Chris.
It seems to me that there are so many different threads in the sort of various and parallel investigations, but Flynn is at the center of all of them. I mean, all of this, in some senses, you know, the way this story has played out, the biggest part of it, the thing that really set off this round of recriminations, was the phone call to Kislyak on Sanctions Day and deception, lies, to the vice president and to the public about the nature of those calls being about the sanctions themselves.
That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that that was ancillary, you know, that it was a deception, but it wasn't necessarily related to collusion with Russia, to people like Roger Stone seeming to know in advance that things were coming out on WikiLeaks. You know, we just don't know. I mean, it could be that Mike Flynn got in trouble on something else entirely, and now they want to know what he knows about other matters relating to, did the Trump campaign collude with Russia? There's just so many questions.
There's also something strange here, which is that the idea that he's sort of offered this deal up to the three different sort of entities that are that are doing investigations: the FBI, the House Committee, the Senate Committee. He hasn't had any takers. Is there anything to glean from that?
Well, when your lawyer says you have a story to tell, that sure seems like he's dangling something before somebody, right? I mean, it seems unlikely that the congressional committees would be willing to grant a witness immunity. That really can mess up a criminal investigation, and everyone knows that, and we've seen that in the past.
Right.
So they're just not going to do that, and so unfortunately, I guess that means we're not going to hear his story in public for some time.
Yeah, the story that he has to tell will remain a mystery, at least in the short term, although something tells me the way this is all going that we will eventually learn it. Ken Delanian, thank you.
You're right. Thank you, Chris.
Joined now by Michael Isikoff, chief investigative correspondent for Yahoo News. And I mean, this seems big, and partly because it has always seemed to me that Flynn was the most exposed of all of these figures, because he'd been sloppy. And there was a lot of stuff he'd done that seemed like really corner cutting.
And also remember, he's so central to so many aspects of this. I mean, he was the national security advisor to the Trump campaign throughout all of last year. Right. Then he's sitting in on the classified intelligence briefings. What we didn't know then is that he was also had this private lobbying business for the government of Turkey. That's actually one part of this that may explain what he fears his exposure is.
Right.
Remember, he only recently retroactively filed with the Justice Department.
That he was just to be clear, he was a secret foreign agent, quite literally. He was a secret, that's not a hyperbolic statement. He was a secret foreign agent during the period of time during the campaign up to election.
Right. He had gone to Moscow and been paid by RT in December 2015. How much of that he disclosed, we still don't know.
Whether the Pentagon says he did not get clearance to do that, possibly in violation of their protocols.
So that's certainly one issue. So just one sort of hesitation about getting too excited about all this is that what he might be worried about are things that are not central to what the committees are looking at.
No, but in some ways I think that's what makes him such an interesting figure, right? Because if he's exposed on other things, that is leverage. I mean, I've covered criminal investigations
Sure.
and FBI investigations, and they don't care how they get you to talk; they just care to get you to talk.
Right. So look, I mean.